Welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're tackling credit cards and debit cards. We'll be using the Investopedia article, Credit Cards versus Debit Cards. What's the difference? It's amazing how many of us carry both of these cards, but don't really grasp how each works.
Right. It's more than just swiping to buy stuff. Understanding these differences can really impact your finances.
So let's break it down. With a debit card, you're using your own money directly from your checking account, like a digital check, basically.
But credit cards, that's where things get a little more, shall we say, complex. With credit, you're borrowing money, promising to pay it back later.
Okay, so that's the core difference. The article dives right into credit cards, calling it living on borrowed time, but with perks. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it definitely catches your attention. But I think it highlights a key point. Credit cards, when used correctly, can actually help you build a really strong financial foundation.
Help me understand that. Why are credit cards so important for building credit? How does that whole system work?
It's all about proving you're trustworthy with borrowed money. Each time you use your credit card and make a payment on time, you're essentially demonstrating that to lenders. Think of it like earning points in a game, but instead of a high score, you're building a positive credit history.
In having good credit, that opens up a lot of doors, right?
It certainly does. Lower interest rates on loans, easier approval for apartments, maybe even better insurance premiums. Your credit score is like your financial reputation. It sticks with you.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But that borrowed time concept makes me a little nervous. The article mentions this debt trap. How can I avoid that?
It's important to be aware of the psychology behind credit cards. There's research showing we tend to spend more freely with plastic compared to cash. It feels less real, so maybe we don't see the impact on our wallets as immediately. One strategy is setting clear spending limits and sticking to them. Treat it like a debit card. Only spend what you can pay back each month.
It's like a safeguard against overspending. Any other tips for using credit cards responsibly?
Definitely. Budgeting apps are a lifesaver. They track your spending in real time, help categorize purchases, and some even send alerts when you're nearing your budget limits. It's like a personal finance assistant in your pocket.
So using those borrowed funds strategically while keeping a close eye on things.
Exactly. And don't forget those perks we talked about. Those can play a big role in offsetting the potential risks of credit cards.
Right, the perks. So besides building credit, what other advantages do credit cards offer?
Protection is a big one. Many cards come with extended warranties on purchases, meaning you're covered beyond the manufacturer's warranty.
Oh, and there's that price protection too.
You got it. If you find a lower price after buying something with your credit card, you can sometimes get a refund for the difference.
That's amazing. What about fraud protection? That feels super important these days.
Absolutely. And credit cards offer much stronger fraud protection than debit cards. There's a law, the Fair Credit Billing Act, that puts the responsibility on the credit card company to investigate and resolve unauthorized charges. With debit, the money is gone from your account instantly, making it harder to recover.
So with credit cards, I'm not immediately on the hook for those fraudulent charges.
Right. Although it's crucial to report any suspected fraud ASAP with both types of cards.
Got it. So it's like having a backup in case something goes wrong.
Exactly. And speaking of travel, many credit cards offer rental car collision damage waivers. You can often skip that extra insurance at the rental counter.
Plus, using a credit card can make international travel so much smoother.
For sure. Trying to use a debit card in some countries can be a nightmare. Credit cards are accepted more widely and often have better exchange rates.
Like a financial passport. But we have to be realistic. Credit cards do come with interest rates, and those can be a bit daunting.
Absolutely. That's why understanding those interest rates is so crucial. Carrying a balance on your credit card can get very expensive quickly, especially if you're only making minimum payments.
It reminds me of those buy now, pay later programs that are everywhere.
Great point. They seem convenient, but they can lead you down a path of debt if you're not careful. It's important to remember that every purchase, every swipe, impacts your overall financial health.
So, while the perks are tempting, it's about using credit cards cautiously and having a plan. What other potential downsides should we be aware of?
Well, there's the impact on your credit score. Late payments, high balances, even applying for too many cards, that can all hurt your score. A lower score means higher interest rates on loans and potentially even difficulty getting approved for things like apartments.
So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. It can help you build credit, but also hurt it if not used carefully.
Striking that balance is key.
Okay, so we've explored the good and the bad of credit cards. Now, let's talk about debit cards. They seem like the safer, more straightforward option.
They definitely have their advantages, especially if you prioritize avoiding debt. With debit cards, you're spending your own money. No risk of high interest charges.
And I've heard that debit cards are catching up in terms of fraud protection. Is that right?
Absolutely. Especially those from major processors like Visa and MasterCard. They've made huge improvements in security.
That's good to know. But what if there are fraudulent charges on my debit card? Is it as easy to resolve as with a credit card?
It might not be as smooth as with credit cards in that Fair Credit Billing Act, but reporting those fraudulent debit card charges right away is vital. The sooner you report, the better your chances of getting your money back.
Okay, so debit cards aren't completely defenseless against fraud. What about fees? Aren't they generally lower than credit cards?
Yes, that's usually true. One big hook of debit cards is no annual fees.
That's a win, especially if you're watching your budget. Any other benefits to using debit cards?
Well, there's that sense of financial control. You're only spending what you have, which can help you stick to a budget and avoid overspending.
Makes sense. Less temptation to impulse buy.
Right. It's a great way to break free from living paycheck to paycheck.
Okay, so debit cards sound pretty good, but I'm guessing there's some downsides too, right?
Of course. One major difference is rewards programs. Debit cards don't typically offer the cash back, points, or miles that are common with credit cards.
That's a bummer. I do love those rewards.
And this is a big one. Using only a debit card won't help you build your credit history.
So it's like you don't even exist in the eyes of those credit bureaus.
Pretty much. And we've already talked about how important good credit is.
It's the classic catch-22. You need credit to build credit, but how do you get started if you're wary of the risks?
A common dilemma, especially for those just starting out.
And while debit cards usually don't have annual fees, they can still have other fees, right?
Right. Watch out for monthly maintenance fees on your checking account, overdraft fees, and even foreign ATM fees.
So even though they seem simpler, it's important to read the fine print with debit cards too.
Always a good idea.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground. The pros and cons, the key differences between credit and debit. But are there any other features or aspects that might surprise our listener?
I think it's time to go beyond the basics, uncover some hidden gems that these cards offer. There are some really interesting features beyond just the basics of swiping to spend that I think you'll find valuable.
All right, let's dive into those then. What's beyond the basics?
Let's start with a feature that's become increasingly popular with certain debit cards. The Roundup feature. It's a clever way to subtly boost your savings.
Sounds intriguing. Tell me how this roundup magic works.
It's quite simple, actually. Whenever you make a purchase with your debit card, the transaction is rounded up to the nearest dollar, and that spare change gets automatically transferred to a linked savings account. For example, let's say you buy a coffee for $2.75. The charge on your debit card would be $3, and that extra 25 cents goes straight into your savings.
It's like a little savings elf, quietly tucking away those spare cents.
Yeah.
I can see how that would add up over time, especially if you're making a lot of purchases.
Exactly. It capitalizes on our tendency to overlook those smaller amounts and turns them into a passive savings strategy. You're saving without even really noticing it.
Now that's what I call working smarter, not harder. Speaking of smart financial habits, the article also mentioned debit cards for kids and teens. What are your thoughts on that? Is it a good idea to give young people access to financial tools like that?
It's an interesting concept with both pros and cons. On the one hand, providing young people with a debit card can be a great way to introduce them to the world of finance, teach them valuable lessons about budgeting, tracking expenses, and making responsible spending choices. It can help them develop a sense of ownership over their finances and learn to manage money within set limits.
It's like giving them a safe space to experiment with financial decision-making before they're faced with the complexities and potential risks of credit.
Precisely. But on the other hand, there's the argument that shielding young people from the realities of credit and debt could hinder their financial development in the long run.
So the argument is that they might miss out on the opportunity to learn how to manage credit responsibly and build a positive credit history early on.
Exactly. It's a delicate balance. Ultimately, the decision of whether or not to give a child or teenager a debit card depends on their individual maturity level, financial understanding, and the level of parental oversight involved. Open communication and guidance are key in these situations.
I agree. It's about equipping them with the knowledge and skills they need to navigate the complexities of the financial world, whether that's through a debit card, a limited access credit card, or even just open discussions about money and responsible spending.
Absolutely. Financial literacy is a lifelong journey, and those early lessons can have a lasting impact.
Okay, so we've talked about the Roundup feature and the potential benefits and challenges of debit cards for young people. What other beyond the basics insights can you share with us?
Let's circle back to the world of credit cards for a moment
Hmm.
and dive into those different tiers we briefly touched upon earlier. Remember, we talked about standard, premium, rewards, balance transfer, and secured cards.
Yes, it was a bit of a whirlwind tour through the credit card landscape. I'm ready to delve deeper into each of those categories.
Let's start with the standard credit card. It's often considered the entry-level option, a good starting point for those new to credit or looking to rebuild their credit history. They usually come with lower credit limits, basic features, and minimal annual fees, if any.
So a good option for dipping your toes into the world of credit without being overwhelmed by a lot of bells and whistles.
Exactly. Then we have premium credit cards, those designed to offer a higher level of prestige and perks. Think airport lounge access, concierge services, exclusive travel benefits, and even higher rewards programs.
Sounds like the credit card equivalent of flying first class. But I imagine those premium perks come with a premium price tag.
You're absolutely right. Premium cards often carry higher annual fees, sometimes reaching hundreds of dollars per year.
So it's essential to weigh the value of those perks against the cost of the annual fee and determine if those benefits truly align with your lifestyle and spending habits.
Precisely. It wouldn't make sense to pay a hefty annual fee for travel perks if you rarely travel, for example.
Okay, so standard cards are for the basics, premium cards are for the luxury seekers. What about those rewards cards? I'm always hearing about cashback, points, and miles, but it's hard to know which program is truly the best.
Rewards cards can be incredibly valuable if you use them strategically. And choose a program that aligns with your spending habits and financial goals. Some cards offer a flat rate cashback percentage on all purchases, while others focus on specific categories like groceries, gas, or dining.
So it's about understanding your spending patterns and choosing a rewards program that maximizes those benefits. For example, if I spend a lot on groceries and dining, it would make sense to choose a card that offers higher rewards in those categories.
Exactly. And then there are travel rewards cards that allow you to accumulate points or miles that you can redeem for flights, hotels, and other travel expenses. Those can be fantastic for frequent travelers.
It's like earning free travel just by using your credit card responsibly. What about balance transfer cards? Those seem to be popular for people trying to consolidate debt.
Balance transfer cards are specifically designed to help you manage high-interest debt from other credit cards. They typically offer a 0% or very low introductory APR for a set period, allowing you to transfer your existing balances and potentially save a significant amount on interest charges.
So it's like a financial breathing room, giving you a chance to tackle your debt without those hefty interest charges weighing you down.
Exactly. But it's crucial to understand the terms and conditions of those introductory offers. Make sure you have a plan to pay off the balance before that introductory period expires, or you could end up with even higher interest rates.
It's like a race against time to get that debt paid off before those interest rates catch up with you. What about those with limited or no credit history? Are there any credit card options available to them?
There are. Secured credit cards are a great option for individuals with a limited or damaged credit history. They require an initial cash deposit that acts as collateral, reducing the risk for lenders.
So it's like a safety net for both the borrower and the lender. The borrower gets access to credit while building their credit history, and the lender has some security in case the borrower defaults on payments.
Precisely. And lastly, we have charge cards, which are a bit unique. They don't have a preset spending limit, but often require you to pay the balance in full each month.
So they offer flexibility for those with higher spending needs, but also require a high level of financial responsibility to avoid racking up large balances.
Exactly. They're not for everyone, but they can be a valuable tool for those who manage their finances diligently and have the income to support those potentially large monthly payments.
Wow, that's a lot to consider. We've covered so much ground, from the psychology of credit card spending to the nuances of debit cards and the vast world of credit card tiers. It's clear that there's no one-size-fits-all solution, and the best choice depends entirely on individual needs and financial goals.
I agree. It's about empowering yourself with knowledge, understanding the different tools available, and making informed decisions that align with your financial aspirations.
I'm feeling much more confident in my ability to navigate the world of credit and debit, but I'm sure our listener has some burning questions swirling in their mind right now. What's the best piece of advice you can offer as they embark on their financial journey?
That's a great question. I think the most important piece of advice is to be proactive, informed, and strategic when it comes to managing your finances. Don't be afraid to ask questions, seek guidance from trusted sources, and make decisions that align with your long-term financial well-being.
Wow, it feels like we've covered everything. From those hidden features like the roundup option to all those different credit card tiers. So where does this leave us? Which card comes out on top?
That's the big question, isn't it? But honestly, there isn't a simple answer. It's not about one being better than the other. The best choice, whether it's one or even a mix of both, really depends on you, your financial situation, how you spend, what your goals are, and how comfortable you are with credit.
So it's less about finding a winner and more about understanding what works best for our own individual financial lives.
Exactly. If you want to build good credit and get those rewards, credit cards can be a great tool if you use them responsibly. But if you're focused on avoiding debt and sticking to a budget, debit cards can be a great way to stay in control.
And there's no rule saying you can't have both. Using a credit card strategically for certain things, like when you want that extra protection or those rewards, and then your debit card for everyday spending to keep yourself in check. That seems like a smart way to go about it.
It's about finding that balance, using each card for what it's best at.
Like having a set of tools, each with its own purpose.
hmm
And now, our listener has a better understanding of how to choose the right tool for the job.
Empowering, isn't it? To be able to make informed decisions about which card to use in different situations.
It definitely is.
Yeah.
This deep dive has given us so much to think about when it comes to credit cards and debit cards.
I hope it's helped to demystify those little pieces of plastic we carry around.
Me too. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive. And remember, keep learning, keep asking questions, and take charge of your financial journey.